Let's cut to the chase. I'm not going to pretend that this is some sort of genius analysis. I didn't read the book, okay? And I'm not concerned about any consensus regarding the meaning of it. From what I understand, both the movie and the book are about a future Britain where the tyranny of the government, societies fall into crime and degeneracy, and the rise of violence leads to a general decay. Alex the Large is otherwise a posh kid living in what would otherwise be a nice neighborhood, where instead of dreaming of using his generational wealth to go study music in London, he just fucks around all day, being a gang member and talking like a gobnik. He assaults, he destroys, he rapes. He is the embodiment of a society that has lost the moral plot, and the government response to it is to torture him into being non-violent. The senseless disregard to human decency on the part of the populace is met with complete and systemic disregard to human decency on the part of the government. It's hard to know which disregard to decency is more egregious and which one leads to or incentivizes the other in this movie, but the book seems to be a lot more about the role of the government in it. A government that at the end of the story claims to have scraped the torture program, issues a formal apology, and then acts as if nothing happens, while Alex remains as violent as ever. You have the hypocrisy of a government that uses guns and violence as a policy on a nearly daily basis, telling you not to be violent with your own guns. You have this program torturing people as a way to combat violence, an institution that will blame anything for violence but certainly not guns, and between the two you have Alex the Large. I am not exaggerating when I say A Clockwork Orange is a documentary about our modern lives. Every single thing that happens in this movie has a parallel with real life, but because the movie is so violent and absurd, it is way too easy to be too confused to even begin to form an opinion on it. I don't know if I should call this movie a warning about the future or simply a faithful description of it. Let's start off by saying Alex the Large is just the typical sexual sadist that would make the rounds back then. In fact, the characters seem to have hypersexual fixations. Some of them are obsessed with finding pleasure in a way that is similar to how our online presence is a search for gratification. The hypersexuality you find in this movie is not only comparable to online culture, but it's also underwhelming. It is no match to porn, gooning, digital sex work, and many other aspects pertaining to the hypersexual reality we live in. The whole thing with the dick statue, the Beethoven masturbation, the vagina art the characters are so fond of, that is the selling of the bathwater, the Instagram thirst traps, the Rule 34. But that's also incomparable to revenge porn, it's incomparable to CP or what the president did in Lake Michigan. Anything in this movie that might be seen as batshit crazy is very descriptive of our reality today, but it is also very tame once you compare them to how these things play out in real life. While the way they talk with this mixed match of some British dialect and streets Russian, the weird way they dress to signal their disdain for others and their sense of superiority, is also comparable to online culture in how we all apply our own digital eyeliner embedded in our own ideological standing or in any subculture one might belong to, sometimes in a way that is as combatant and flamboyant as their fashion sense is. Now, you could compare gang violence in the movie to gang violence in real life, but I don't think it would be a good fit. It actually reminds me somewhat of funny games. And this is where the entire narrative of A Clockwork Orange, the movie, sort of falls flat and then back into place again as it reveals the same ugly truth that funny games does. Violence doesn't need ideology or passion, it only needs systems and compliance. A Clockwork Orange begs a question. Is a man still moral if he cannot choose evil? Funny Games answers. Morality, choice, and meaning don't matter either way. In A Clockwork Orange, violence is stylized, theatrical, and excessive. It is tied to pleasure, identity, and rebellion. Alex enjoys violence, and so does we, the audience, uncomfortably. Violence is a performance. The youth is chaos, and society is hypocritical, which is accurate. Why do you think mass shooters wear costumes and write manifestos? It is a performance tied to identity and rebellion. Now, in Funny Games, violence is procedural and withheld. It is not expressive and cathartic. There is no point to it whatsoever. The movie doesn't make the audience spectators, it makes us accomplices, and then, much like in real life, it denies us resolution. There is no pleasure in it. In Funny Games, we are not implicated in that violence through our enjoyment of it, in the same way that if you enjoy A Clockwork Orange, you might feel weird due to the ultra-violence in it. We are implicated in that violence through the slow, painful endurance of it as we watch this family be massacred. The same way, we are not implicated in school shootings because of our enjoyment of it, but because we allow it to persist. A Clockwork Orange presents violence as the identitarian playground of one single man. But throughout the movie, it quietly dismantles that idea and presents violence by what it is: systematic and compliant. He didn't rape that woman alone. He had his druggies hold her down. He didn't break into that other woman's house alone. His druggies helped him. Competent police work could have stopped him from continuing, but the authorities seemingly didn't care enough, while his parents were too cowardly to do anything about it. Society and the perpetrators of violence themselves like to think of their actions as ideologically motivated, as something that is in a moral high horse, and is an act of ultimate expression of anger and revolt, and as a communication mechanism of one's identity and beliefs. But the one thing acts of violence have in common is that they're ultimately meaningless and empty. The passion and the fervor for violence that Alex expresses are not necessary for violence to exist. This ideological understanding of himself as a superior leader and an inflictor of harm doesn't stop the system from inflicting harm upon him. Although in real life, Alex would probably have had better chances. He is prime Groyper material, or at least he'd be the proudest of the Proud Boys. There would be no violence-repelling torture. In America, the police would have simply given him a burger before sending him to prison. So the ultimate accuracy of this Clockwork Orange world that we live in today is that violence comes embellished in ideological fervor and interpersonal motifs. But it doesn't matter how many pretty ribbons you put around it, violence ultimately comes down to nothing. Violence is as much of a mundane part of the system as taxation or road regulations. But I wouldn't feel right if I ended it at that. Because even though the assertion that violence is ultimately meaningless seems true, and it does sound like the most grounded philosophical conclusion, doesn't it conveniently exclude the violence perpetrated by the state? Alex the Large will continue to commit atrocities, and then he will surely get what's coming to him. But does the system get what's coming? A Clockwork Orange and Funny Games, as big-brained as they are flawed in how they define violence. One portrays the system accurately, then it focuses on one man's personal struggle. It is more concerned with asking what the nature of morality is. The other presupposes morality doesn't exist, and then it is concerned with dismantling our notions of authority and order by transforming the Germanic bourgeois social contract into the very thing that doomed this family. But if we are gonna be honest, just for a moment, the only reason why we look at funny games with such a high brows and we give it an intellectual pass, it's because the perpetrators of the violence here are white, Protestant, Austrian men. If this movie tried to tell us that morality doesn't exist by having two Muslim jihadist characters kill this entire Austrian family, you know the reception in Europe would be entirely different. I don't want to end this video by saying that any and all acts of violence are ultimately pointless and ultimately selfishly cruel. Because again, this conclusion leaves the state and systemic violence out of the question. This is a very privileged opinion to have because it treats the violence of the oppressor against the oppressed as the same as the violence from the oppressed against the oppressor, while nullifying systemic violence, which in a lot of ways is extremely accurate. These two movies do not offer a holistic take on violence, which is not a criticism, by the way, because even though one personalizes violence too much and the other makes violence too abstract, in doing so, A Clockwork Orange in particular offers us one last comparison to the real world. Well, apart from the MK Ultra comparison, we all know this kind of shit happens in real life. The movie ends with the white boy being treated as a victim of the state, which he is, but the crimes he indeed committed are seemingly ignored. He's too much of a good story for the state's opposition, and the state is in need of some good PR work. Something a little similar happened in our world not even 2 weeks ago, because in Clockwork Orange, no matter how much of a white, Christian, male, Austrian or American you are, people leverage morality just like the funny games guys, and people are morally self-absorbed just like Alex. And as a result, as long as someone is white, Christian or conservative enough, then violence is bad and they are the victims. But if they are brown or black enough, if they are left-leaning enough, or just white really, then violence is justified, and to hell with them.
You're a liar!
Stop it. Let's go, Eric. I want to go now.
I'm not going home with you! I'm not!
I don't want to do the damn video anymore.
Leave me alone, I'm taking the bus!